Shalom, my friends. Welcome to this week's Word Study. We're going to look again at the second parable that we see in Matthew 13. First, in Matthew chapter 13, verse 35, we see Psalm 78, verse 2 quoted, where we read, "I will speak in parables and utter things hidden since the creation of the world." Now, there are 7 parables in Matthew 13, all of them revealing mysteries or secrets about the Malchut of the Shamayim, that is the kingdom of heaven, which were previously hidden from the eyes, the ears, and the hearts of everyone until Yeshua spoke them nearly 2,000 years ago. Today, we're going to look at the parable of the weeds. This is seen in Matthew chapter 13, verses 24 through 30. And first, I'm going to read it. And once again, I'm not reading from any particular English Bible version. I am elaborating on the original Aramaic to bring forth the clearest English I know how to do. And of course, you know, there are those who believe that the renewed covenant, commonly called the New Testament, nothing new about the New Testament, it's the renewed covenant. Many contest that it was all written in Greek. And if you're familiar with my videos, you know that to me, it's only too obvious. It was originally written in Aramaic and immediately translated into Greek. The Greek texts traveled west, Yam, into darkness. The Aramaic, the original texts, traveled east, Kadam, back towards the light. But even those who contest that the renewed covenant books were written in Greek, they all, if they have any knowledge at all, agree that, oh, well, the book of Matthew was written in Aramaic. We know that. They're all written in Aramaic, but at any rate, you know, Matthew is uncontested on that count. So first I'm going to read verses 24 through 30 in chapter 13 of Matityahu, and then we'll expound on those points. So beginning with verse 24, we read, "Yeshua put another parable before them, saying, the Malchut of the Shamayim, that is the kingdom of heaven, is like a man who sowed good seed in his field, seeds of wheat. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed also darnel weeds among the wheat and went away. And when the plants sprouted and bore fruit, then the darnel weeds also appeared. And the servants of the master of the house came to him and said, 'Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? From where then came the darnel shoots that have grown in it?' And he replied to them, saying, 'A man, an enemy, has done this.' And the servants said to him, 'Then do you want us to go and weed them out?' But he said, 'No, lest while you gather up the darnel weeds, you also root up the true wheat along with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And at the time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, gather the darnel weeds first, and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my granary. And when the plants sprouted and bore fruit, then the darnel weeds also appeared.'" Note, darnel weeds, often seen as tares. these look exactly like wheat until harvest time, when they change their color. The time of harvest refers to the second coming of Mashiach, and also to the Net Chatef, the rapture. But there's a very interesting difference between the Net Chatef, the rapture, and the second coming. At the Net Chatef, the rapture, as seen in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 13 through 17, the righteous are taken and the wicked are left behind. But at the second coming, as we see in Matthew chapter 13, verse 30, the wicked are taken and the righteous are left behind. Now, also, there are many who teach that this parable is about churches being filled with wheat and tares. But Yeshua was never referring to churches. And I can't for the life of me, well, yes I can. Pastors and evangelists teach this false doctrine because they don't read the Word. They only spout out the man-made doctrines of their religion. Yeshua makes it all clear enough in verses 36 through 43 in chapter 13, where we read that his Talmudim came to him saying, "Explain the parable of the darnel weeds in the field to us." And Yeshua answered them, saying, "He who sows the good seed is the bane of Adam." As we saw in last week's study, the sower is Yeshua. Yeshua continues saying, the field is the world, not churches or religions. He tells us clearly the field is the world. And the good seed, these are the children of the Malchut, the children of the kingdom, his kingdom. But the darnel weeds are the children of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. In previous videos of mine, I talk about, I repeat many times that there are only two seeds in the world, the good seed and the bad seed. You might say the wheat and the darnel weeds. This is what Yeshua is talking about here. We have only two kinds of seed in this world. The good seed, the children of the Malchut of Elohim, the children of the kingdom of Elohim. And the bad seeds, the children of Satan, the children of the evil one. Yeshua continues saying, the harvest is the close and consummation of the age, and the reapers are the malachim, the angels. Continuing, he says, just as the darnel weeds resembling wheat are gathered and burned in the fire, so it will be at the close of the age. That would be at the second coming of Yeshua. The bane of Adam, Yeshua, will send out his malachim, angels, and they will gather out of his malchut, kingdom, all causes of offense, all persons by whom others are drawn into error or sin, and all who do lawlessness and act wickedly, those who follow their own path instead of following the way, the straight and narrow path. And Yeshua will throw them into the furnace of fire, Gehenna, where there will be weeping and wailing and the grinding of teeth. Yeshua continuing, he says, then the righteous, meaning those who are upright and in right standing with Elohim, will shine forth like the sun in the malchut of their Father, in the kingdom of their Father. And he closes saying, let him who has ears to hear, listen. Let him consider and perceive and understand by hearing. So, you see, the wheat and the darnel weeds, or tares, have nothing to do with any members of churches. No, they have only to do with the entire population of all the people on the earth. Let's look at some of the finer points of this parable. In verse 24, Yeshua says, "The Malchut of the Shamayim, the kingdom of heaven, is like a man who sowed good seed in his field," meaning seeds of wheat. And we know, as I said before from last week's study, the parable of the sower, that the man sowing seed is Yeshua. The seed he sows is a true grain, wheat. Verse 25 says, "But while men slept, Yeshua's enemy came and sowed the darnel weeds, or tares, among the wheat, and went away." And of course, the enemy here is Satan and his minions, the master of disguise, planting false believers among true believers throughout the world. People who look and act the part of being believers in Elohim, but are not. False seeds, darnel weeds, or tares, that look exactly like the good seed, wheat, until harvest time, the second coming, when their colors change. And further, speaking of churches and religions, those who disfellowship members of their churches or religions, they are disobeying Yeshua's instructions to not uproot or separate darnel weeds from the wheat. That is something he will take care of himself at the end of the age. So these people who throw people out of their churches or religions or disfellowship them or whatever, they're not obeying the Father's word at all. Those religious leaders who like to disfellowship people are acting as if they are Elohim. And in fact, they are like the Nicolaitans who lord themselves over the flock and whom Elohim hates. See Revelation chapter 2, verse 6. So, we have the parable of the wheat, and Yeshua explains it very clearly, giving this illustration that there are two kinds of seed in the world, the good seed and the bad seed, the wheat, the tares, or the darnel weeds, the good seed from the vine of Yeshua HaMashiach, the bad seed from the vine of the wicked one, Hashatan. And Satan, plants bad seed among the good seed. He sends in, his troops to try and trick and fool people who are in love with Elohim. And he sends in people who make believe they're in love with Elohim, the master of disguise. They look true. The word tells us, you know a man by his fruit. The fruit of the Ruach, the fruit of the Spirit. If someone is of the good seed of Yeshua, they will be bearing the fruit of the Ruach. Patience, kindness. You can look at the the full list over here. One of my favorite ones is self-control. Someone who really is receiving the filling of the Ruach, not just the indwelling. And as I've explained many times before, people who pray to Abba Father to make his son Yeshua their master, the Father puts his indwelling Ruach, his Spirit, in them. That's one thing. But the filling of the Ruach only comes if that person, if that person's desire to know Elohim doesn't stop and continues to grow. The more time they spend in the Word, the more time they spend in prayer and in fellowship, pitching their tent with Him, and eventually He starts pitching His tent with them. The filling of the Ruach starts to grow in them, and the fruit known as self-control, it's the last one listed in that list. I think because you have to go through everything in the list, you know, in the order that's there, and the last one, when you really have the filling, you have self-control. That's a real sign. But you know, Satan is putting the bad seeds in there, and Yeshua says, leave it alone like that. This is how the Father wants it. Because if you try and root them out, you might mess up some of the good seed in the process. Leave it alone until the second coming, until the harvest time. The Father has His plan, and He knows what He's doing. You don't touch anything. You just leave it as it is. And those who are of the good seed and who are growing in the filling of the Ruach, the bad seeds aren't going to fool them. The bad seeds aren't going to influence them. Nonetheless, to the average person, to the naked eye, they look like all the others. The bad seed look just like the good seed until harvest time. And this is true with the darnel weeds versus the wheat. It's not until they ripen and it's harvest time, the darnel, they change their color, and then you can really see. Well, the tribulation is, you know, where everything ripens and those true colors will be seen. And certainly when Yeshua returns with those who were taken in the Nechatef, those bad seeds are going to be more than obvious. So there's the parable of the wheat and the tares. And again, these 7 parables in Matthew 13 are Yeshua's teachings which reveal knowledge to those who have eyes that see, ears that hear, and hearts that understand about the secrets and the mysteries of the Malchut, of the Shamayim, the kingdom of heaven. That is, the physical part of the Malchut of Elohim, the kingdom of Elohim. Kingdom of heaven is just a small part of the kingdom of Elohim. And the kingdom of heaven, the Malchut of the Shamayim, is something we will see manifested during the 1,000-year millennium. And that is our study for this week, my friends. As always, I hope and I pray that this study is a beracha to you and yours. And, Abba willing, I'll see you here again next week. Until then, shalom, chavarim. Shalom, my friends.
Now 2,000 years have gone by, it's another working day. Some would rather let it lie, but the question still remains.